up for you. In on point one, Trump says the war is over. Iran says resistance has triumphed. So who really won West Asia conflict? The world's most powerful military or a regime that refused to surrender? In on point two, focuses on the mountains that draw millions of tourists every year are beginning to drown in their garbage. From plastic-choked rivers to kilometer-long traffic jams are India's hills being loved to death. In on point three, two strategic bombers, two major crashes, Russia's Tu-22 and America's B-52 go down, are aging Cold War giants becoming a growing concern for US and Russia. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Prime Minister Modi shares powerful handshake with US President Donald Trump at G7 summit in France, marking their first in-person meeting in 16 months. Ahead of the NEET UG re-exam, trial helicopters landing and mock drill conducted at the Tirunelveli Armed Reserve ground to ensure secure handling of the examination papers. Rebellion clamor in Uddhav Thackeray's UBTS Shiv Sena leader Krupal Tumane claims that 7 MPs from the Uddhav UBT are in talks to join the Eknath Shinde faction. Arvind Kejriwal accuses BJP of using ED to extort traders and industrialists in Punjab, claims businesses are being threatened with raids unless they donate to the BJP. DMK launches scathing attack at Rahul Gandhi in its official editorial, calls him a backstabber, immature politician who is weakening India bloc. Four months after a conflict that pushed West Asia to the brink, Washington and Tehran are now claiming a breakthrough. President Donald Trump says he has secured a deal that could open the Strait of Hormuz and launch a new phase of nuclear negotiations. But in Tehran, the message is very different. Iranian leaders insist they resisted American pressure, protected their core interest, and forced the United States to compromise. Iran's chief negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf is framing the agreement as proof that Iran stood firm against overwhelming pressure. His message is simple: Iran was attacked, isolated and sanctioned, yet it survived by invoking resistance, sacrifice and national pride. Tehran is attempting to turn a costly war into a political victory. The question is whether survival itself is now being presented as success. President Trump entered the conflict promising total victory. He spoke of unconditional surrender, regime change and dismantling Iran's nuclear program. Yet the emerging framework suggests many of those objectives remain unresolved. Iran's government survives, nuclear negotiations continue, and the final terms are still unknown. Critics argue America may have paid a high price only to return to a negotiating table that resembles one it abandoned years ago. The battlefield tells a complicated story. Iran lost key military assets, senior commanders, and much of its conventional capability. The United States demonstrated overwhelming military power, yet wars are not judged only by destruction. They are judged by political outcomes. If Iran preserved its regime and retained leverage, can it still claim victory? If America failed to achieve its stated objectives, can Washington call this a success? The guns may be falling silent, but the hardest phase may only be beginning. Over the next 60 days, negotiations must tackle sanctions, nuclear verification, and regional security guarantees. Any disagreement could derail the process. The bigger question is whether this agreement creates a more stable West Asia or merely pauses a conflict that could return with even greater intensity. My understanding is that Trump has lost the war, but maybe my panelists would differ. Let me introduce my panel: Ambassador Veena Sikri, former Indian diplomat, Major General Sudhakarji, Professor Swaran Singh, and Professor Scott Lucas, who joins me directly from Dublin. Thank you all of you for joining me. Let me straight away go to Ambassador Sikri. Madam, did Trump lose the war?
I think at the moment he has lost the peace. That's a better way to put it, because in the war itself, there was a lot of loss of military hardware even by Iran. So Iran has certainly been weakened militarily, although they have managed to retain their edge in terms of missiles and other weaponry to attack. But I think that the biggest worry is that, you know, few days ago, President Trump had said that he is going to attack Iran before the night is over. So that was on Friday or Thursday. But he could not do it because I think the popularity in America against the war was overwhelming. And so he was definitely advised at that time that don't do it. And that at that moment, when he could not carry out his promise, which he had made in the morning to attack Iran by that evening, at that moment, it was very clear that America is not in a position to carry on with the war. And so they had to negotiate for the peace.
Okay.
They had to negotiate the peace. And in the peace, what has happened is that I think we have this issue today. The biggest standoff in the peace, immediate standoff, is between opening the Strait of Hormuz and withdrawal of the naval blockade by America. That is a critical standoff because the Iranians are saying Trump is promising the Strait of Hormuz will be open by Friday. That's not possible. The Iranians are saying they will not open the Strait of Hormuz fully until the naval blockade is withdrawn. So this standoff has to be resolved. These issues were not there before the war. The Strait of Hormuz was open and there was no naval blockade. Now these issues have come in. If you talk about the Iran nuclear...
no, actually, madam, I'll take this point forward. Trump has actually ended up giving a powerful economic weapon to Iran, that is Strait of Hormuz, which was not there on the map. So, Professor Lucas, your opening statement, has Trump lost this war? Did he fail to achieve political outcomes?
Well, two wider points, first of all, nobody wins in a war. The Iranians have taken serious damage, more than 3,000 killed. Don't forget that almost 4,000 people in Lebanon have been killed since March the 2nd. You have had dozens of Israeli military and civilians killed. You've had 13 American servicemen killed. You've had damage first and foremost to the Iranian economy, but to the global economy. Secondly, we don't have even a framework deal yet. So we have to caveat this. All we really have is an agreement for a 60-day extension of the ceasefire. When Trump issued his agreement, signed the document on Sunday, his senior advisors didn't even know he was going to sign. So Iran and the U.S. have different versions of what actually is there. And of course, we haven't had a published version of the text. But to give you my summary statement, look, and emphasizing what Ambassador Sikri said, the Iranian regime has not only survived, they have better political terms now than they did on February 26th, which was the last U.S.-Iranian talks 2 days before the war. Not only do they have leverage over the Strait of Hormuz, they have not made any specific commitment regarding their civilian nuclear program, which they were close to making on February the 26th. They look like, although the Americans are not confirming the amount, at the very least, the Iranians are going to get billions of dollars in the unfreezing of assets. We'll see if it's up to $24 billion, which is what they are seeking. They may get reparations on top of that. The Americans are being quite vague at this point. And importantly, on the nuclear program, they've gotten that moved to the second stage of talks. Before you even get to the nuclear program, it's going to be the Strait of Hormuz and the American blockade. I would also add that what is not on the table anymore, but was there at the end of February, was Iran's ballistic missile program and its relations with other groups like Lebanon's Hezbollah and Yemen's Houthis. So the regime has been damaged. It's lost its leadership. The Iranian economy has suffered. There will be a return to domestic issues in Iran once we get a lasting ceasefire. But politically, you have to say that Trump effectively threw away American leverage when he went to war alongside the Israelis.
Okay, Professor Swaran Singh, your opening comments. Do you think that Trump will end up accepting a reworked version of Obama deal on, fissile material?
Let me, Karthikeya, begin by saying that what is happening in Iran is perfectly in order with a century of American wars, one after another, where America has never had a clear victory. I don't know if you want to credit them for the Second World War or any share in the ultimate results. We remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And therefore, whether it was the Korean War, and Korea is still divided, Vietnam War, and Vietnam was taken over by communists, Later, you saw Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. So it's perfectly in order as to how United States goes and destroys countries and claims that they have become victorious. Even here, the war may end, but conflict will not. Iran has come out much stronger despite all the death and destruction that they have faced. The allies of United States are in a far greater doubt today whether they can depend on American leadership for their own security. And all we have right now is possibility of extension of a fragile ceasefire by another 60 days, and nothing else is yet anywhere near any conclusion on either side. There are wide differences in terms of what are the claims on both sides. Iran is talking of even reparations, not just unfreezing of assets. It's talking about Strait of Hormuz to be managed by Iran and Oman. We don't know how and when it is going to be opened up, under what terms and conditions, etc. Nuclear program is yet on the table. I have no idea how Trump is going to pick up the nuclear dust as he keeps talking about. So Trump has in fact further created much clumsier conclusion of a conflict that he has started compared to earlier presidents. At least they had some way of better managing their defeat than President Trump has. And therefore, I think what has happened now is Iran comes out as far stronger in the outcome. And therefore, you see constantly Iran is standing tough. It is talking of peace in Lebanon. There is enormous confusion. And we hear American officials now saying that Lebanon ceasefire is a possibility, but Israeli soldiers are not going to be withdrawing from there. I am not sure if Iran is going to accept that kind of conditionality. So I think it's a normal thing that United States has done in last 100 years, whenever it has dispatched soldiers abroad, except that the end in Afghanistan and now in Iran under President Trump is far more clumsier. And in that sense undermines American global leadership. And therefore, if you want to call it a defeat, it's just semantics. United States has never called any of its military exits from the war theaters as a defeat. In fact, most countries go home saying they were victorious, but reality on the ground is conflict stands much more complicated. And as you said, Iran has now.
No, you are right. Lot of newspaper
important
editorials in America wrote that let Trump believe that he has won this war in Iran, lest he attacks Cuba because he would like another victory. Because if you say he got defeated in Iran, he might end up attacking Cuba, and he will claim that this is the real victory. So I understand the larger point you're trying to make. General Sudhakarji, your opening comments.
Good evening, Karthikeya. Thank you, and my warm greetings to very distinguished and esteemed co-panelists. Well, my take on the whole issue is who attacked first? It is USA, not Iran. Iran has retaliated. Before 28 February 2026, Iran was like any other country existing in Middle East or anywhere in the world. But without any doubt, it has emerged as a regional power. Whether we like it or not, accept it or not, it definitely is a regional power. And the dynamics thereby in Middle East or West Asia are undergoing a process of change. And also, without taking too much time, very quickly, if you allow me, there is a bigger game which Donald Trump hasn't come out with. And to my assessment and study and research, that bigger game is the contestation between the bipolar and the multipolarity. Given the fact that 14th, 15th May, the summit level meeting between Xi and Donald Trump should not be dismissed by anyone. Any student of geopolitics or anyone who's carrying out a study on this must take note of the fact constructive strategic stability based on cooperation. One, this is a very important thing. And he has made Donald Trump to reconcile to the fact that both the poles can grow simultaneously in their orientation and growth without actually confronting against each other. This is one point. This was followed by a visit by Putin, and they signed an agreement. That agreement was a reinforcement of an agreement which had been signed in 2013. I think, if I respect my memory, it was the first ever visit by Xi to any foreign country. He had gone to Moscow, he had signed there, and it was related to the changing world order with regard to multipolarity. And the document which was signed between Putin and Xi in the recent past, it actually highlights one very important aspect. That important aspect is the emergence of multipolar world and a constructive strategic stability by cooperation. So this is what, and it says that the international relations of a new type. What is the new type? They are harping on the factor of multipolarity. USA is not in liking of this particular terminology. They believe in bipolar world, and the manifestation in Middle East today, again, whether we like it or not, Iran is engaged with all the stakeholders in West Asia. They have made it very loud and clear. 21st of, if I respect my memory again, on 21st March 2026, the president of Iran has gone to make a public statement that a local problem has to be resolved with a local solution. Meaning a West Asia problem has to be resolved with a West Asia solution. Outsiders are not permitted to stay on for longer. Meaning they have told in no uncertain terms, please buzz off.
Okay, so I know, but I have a question, but Ambassador Sikri, I'll come after a short break, and my question to you would be that then what are the objectives that America was able to achieve? Fissile material, regime change, revolution which they wanted. What did Americans achieve? Israel can say they achieved a lot of things. What was the American achievement? Or was America fighting Israel's war, and now Israel is not listening to the Americans because it's decided to stay in Lebanon, which is also illegal, not correct? But after a short break, ma'am.
Digital arrest, take part.
Hey, warranted. You are under
Digital arrest.
Cut! Vigilante of vigilante.
ये है असली अरेस्ट. डिजिटल अरेस्ट इज 100% फेक. इट डजंट एग्जिस्ट. पॉज. डोंट एक्ट. ऐसे और भी फ्रॉड्स की जानकारी के लिए विजिलेंटी को फॉलो करें.
With changing times, change is necessary, but this change is meaningful only when it improves the lives of ordinary people. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India is moving towards a new era in healthcare, an India where illness does not become compulsion or financial crisis for any family. 2018, the launch of Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana.
हमारी सरकार का प्रयास है कि बीमारी कम हो, साथ ही बीमारी पर होने वाला खर्च भी कम हो. इसलिए हम आयुष्मान भारत योजना लेकर आए हैं. ये कार्ड 5 लाख रुपए के एटीएम कार्ड का काम करेगा.
Under the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, eligible families across the country are receiving cashless treatment of up to 5 lakh rupees per year. So far, more than 43 crore Ayushman cards have been issued nationwide.
हाँ, पिछले 6-8 महीने पहले मेरा आयुष्मान भारत कार्ड बना था. इस कार्ड के बनने से मुझे सहायता मिली है. जो इस उम्र में रहता है वही समझ सकता है कि यदि फाइनेंशियल हेल्प मिल जाए तो कितनी बड़ी बात होती है. इसके लिए मैं सरकार का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ.
Over the past 12 years of Modi government's tenure, India has redefined its healthcare system. With expansion of Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the country is witnessing a historic transformation in the field of public health.
देश के 80 करोड़ गरीबों को मुफ्त राशन देने वाली योजना को भाजपा सरकार अब अगले 5 साल के लिए और बढ़ाएगी. आप देश के किसी भी हिस्से में जाएं तो भी आपको मुफ्त राशन मिलता रहेगा।
Whenever there are any corner of the country, no one should have to struggle for ration. This message has been turned into reality on the ground by the Government of India. Under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyana Anna Yojana, more than 80 crore people across the country are being provided 5 kilograms of free ration every month. The scheme has launched in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic with the aim of ensuring food security for the poor under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Beneficiaries of this scheme can continue to collect their free ration from nearby fair price shops across the country without difficulty.
मुझे सरकारी तरफ से राशन मिलता है 12 किलो। प्राइवेट नौकरी करते हैं, उसमें 10-12 हज़ार सैलरी मिलती है, फिर भी उसमें हमको 2000 का राशन अगर मुझे यहाँ बाहर से लेते हैं तो बढ़ता नहीं आता है। जो राशन सरकार से मिलता है वो सरकार से मुझे थोड़ा संतुलन मिलता है।
In the Union Budget of 2026-27, the Government of India is set to allocate 2,27,429 crore for the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. This is significantly higher than the previous year's allocation of 2.03 lakh crore. This reflects government's continued focus on public welfare and food security and shows that even after 12 years, the commitment towards supporting the poor remains unchanged.
Well, I really apologize for such a big break, but let me straight away, without wasting time, let me go across to Ambassador Sikri. Madam, did Trump actually fall for Benjamin Netanyahu's assessment of a quick war?
I think President Trump has, for whatever reason, there's such a multiplicity of reasons, he has been forced into doing Israel's bidding on, in the case of the joint attack on Iran. Many other US presidents had, Prime Minister Netanyahu would try to persuade them that, look, we have to finish off Iran so that the Gulf position is safe, so that the Middle East is safe, West Asia is safe. But so far, no American president had accepted this argument from the Israelis. But President Trump has gone in for the argument, but obviously either the intelligence was all wrong or Israeli assessment was wrong. But the fact that with the killing of the Supreme Leader Khomeini, everything would crumble, that did not happen. So Iran has shown a strong resilience, a resilience in terms of leadership, a resilience in terms of fighting a war, so that they have been able to always preserve their weaponry and their hardware and their missiles, and so they have shown a victory in that way. But I think that one of the important lessons for this war and from this war, and I think we should look at it very seriously in India from this point of view, that while President Trump offered a G2 to China and China did not accept, but we have to recognize that China sees inexorably that they will become number one very soon. And that is the issue that we in India have to look at and to see how we strengthen our multipolarity. And I think Prime Minister's various visits have gone a long way in strengthening the multipolarity. We are looking at new approaches to energy security. We're looking at new partners in multipolarity. Look at our coordination with Europe now. We're looking at, a strategic oil reserve in Fujairah with UAE. We're looking at a new pipeline from Oman to India, for ensuring energy security. So we also don't want to be dependent on the Strait of Hormuz for 50% of our oil supplies and even more for gas. So it's what we have to learn from this, that we have to protect our own interests, and I think India has so far done quite well out of it. But certainly between USA for President Trump, this is a moment of reckoning. And
I completely agree with you, madam, that after trade deal, this was a moment of reckoning, that there is no end or limit to American transactionalism under President Donald Trump. And this war has taught us. Professor Lucas, my question is slightly different for you. Do you think that Iran also ended up getting sympathy?
Yeah, I think the Iranian nation got sympathy from this. I mean, this, as the general pointed out, he asked that question first of all, who started this war? And it was the U.S. and Israel, and I think that sympathy, not only amongst where you would expect to get it across Asia, for example, across the Middle East, in Latin America, I think even areas like the United States and Western Europe. I think a lot of people saw the U.S. as the aggressor there. I think there's a key question there, however.
Indian social media handles, Professor Lucas, I mean to say, you just need to go back 20 days.
Absolutely. But I think the reason why I'm being a bit nuanced here is does that mean sympathy for the Iranian regime? And remember that we are only a few months removed from January's nationwide protest over the economic and political conditions in Iran, where the regime killed at least thousands of protesters. And as I speak to you, they're in a wave of executions of those protesters. 40 people who have been executed during this war. When we finally have this settling down, if hopefully we have this settling down in terms of an end to the war, then that becomes the Iranian narrative again, which is of a regime which has lost legitimacy with a lot of its people, which will be facing economic issues, which is still not well liked by many countries in the region. Think about the Gulf states, for example. And that, I think, the kaleidoscope will turn again. It won't be a question of Iran versus the United States. It'll be a question of what does Iran become now? And will it use that opportunity to try to finally have a system which also protects the people as well as the leadership?
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, I'll ask a very different question, from a very different perspective. Has Israel been able to settle its security issues through these wars it has fought with the American help in last 90 days? Because if that's the primary objective which fueled this war, then I would say, has that primary objective been met by the Israelis? Because they are the ones who are fueling this war.
First of all, I think as Ambassador Sikri had mentioned initially, wars solve no issues. So conflicts continue. And when it comes to Israel, this is not the only time it is fighting its neighbors. It is fighting its neighbors right from day one of its creation, whether it was a covert war or overt war. That is the only distinction that we see. So Israel is a security state, and in that sense, its sense of insecurity, if anything, has only enhanced because the primary actor that threatens its existence is Iran. And despite all death and destruction, Iran has come out stronger. If you remember what was happening in December in Iran, where almost every city, every province was witnessing violent protests and the regime was on verge of collapse. And that is what made Americans think that they could have a quick victory. And of course, if you look at the history of wars, every war was initiated when leadership was convinced of a quick victory. And the same was true of this war as well. So Iran, at least the revolutionary Islamic Iran regime, has become stronger because the people who were against it are now standing behind it. They may go against it again after coming months and years. I'm not saying that's not possibility. What Americans have achieved is perhaps a certain amount of more oil contracts. Oil prices going up has made them more money. Maybe they made good use of opportunities of investing in right sectors. But in terms of geopolitics, I think there's a clear loss as far as America is concerned, because they are apparently for weeks and weeks appearing to be desperate for looking for an exit strategy, whereas Iran has stood firmly despite all the death and destruction, pushing its own arguments very strongly as to on what basis, on what terms it is willing to talk. And of course, I am even doubtful whether that 1.5 page of understanding is going to be really put into black and white and signed on Friday. You remember JCPOA was 159 page document detailing a whole lot of things that Iran was under constraints and on what terms Iran was being given certain amount of relief in sanctions. And the JCPOA became ineffective once Trump walked out of it in 2018. And there is a near impossibility of what was achieved in those 20 months of 5+1 negotiations with Iran to be replicated this time. We don't even know the kind of draft that they are saying they have signed online. None of that language is yet available for public, partly because there are enormous differences even on that 1.5 page. which fundamentally is trying to ensure extension of this fragile ceasefire by another 2 months, holding out the promise that then they will negotiate on what are really complex issues, which are hopefully not very likely to be resolved in 60 days. So we might see greater complications at end of those 2 months, or another extension of the same ceasefire by another 60 days or more. So complete uncertainty, and I think Iran has stood out stronger in this case, and world is less confident of depending on United States.
Okay, so Dhakarji, this is also because Professor Singh used the word achievement. Did Americans also achieve showcasing their vulnerability to the future wars? Is this first war in which Americans have actually looked unprepared for the first time? Vietnam, there was a shock and awe. Iraq, there was a shock and awe. In every war, whether they achieved their political outcomes or not, there was no debate on the American military ability, tech shock and all. But this time, they couldn't even move in their 3 nuclear armed ships, the motherships, nuclear carriers. They could not move them to the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes, Kartikeya, I hope I'm audible, although your time is up, but I'm sure you...
I still have 3 minutes for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that long break. I was taken by surprise, but it happens all the time.
Without any doubt, America does not have any particular operation or campaign to feel proud of and state that they have come out victorious. Without any doubt. Yes, the Korean Peninsula, maybe to an extent, or the Battle of Cyprus, I don't regard that. Desert Storm, I don't consider. So therefore, not only this, there are many preceding battles and the wars which USA has participated. They did not have a successful story to carry home or take forward for the future generation. Let me answer this. But this 40 days war, or 39 days of aerial war, had demonstrated the following things. First and foremost thing is the limit of power of USA as a superpower has been demonstrated loud and clearly. Number 2, there is a declining monopoly on information, technology and equipment.
Yes.
Number 3, China can provide alternate platforms of modern technology and armaments, geospatial data, surveillance platforms, new domain expertise, shipping lanes, banking, and name anything. It is capable. I'm not saying that it is competent. Okay. And next point I have to share with due humility is that I'm sure there are learned people in the panel, they will agree with me or bear me out, that the Western hegemony has begun to decline. This is without any doubt. Having said this, many of us may not be aware or may be aware, and we might have glossed over, Iran as on today is engaged with all the relevant stakeholders in the Persian Gulf or in the Middle East to go in for a regional architecture of security. That is what Xi was insisting when he met Trump, that the time has come. During your time of Cold War 1.0, you focused on security. Even now you're focusing on security. When you talk about security, you are also focusing on confrontation. Whereas I'm talking about global initiative for security. What it means is that development takes the primacy, or it is a predominant factor. Security comes later. Whereas in your case, your focus was on the security. So when I'm talking about the development, the sphere of influence that you're harping on is not relevant to me, but
Can I add one thing to your? Can I add one thing to your narrative? America has to learn that there is something called cheap warfare. It has been demonstrated in Armenia and Azerbaijan. It has been and now been proven by Iran. There is something called cheap warfare.
One line, if you may allow, Kartikeya, only one line. That is what you have actually taken it out from my mouth. 8th of August 2025. There was a summit level meeting in White House. The leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, they came, they signed a document, and peace, whether it prevails or not, but at least he has actually added something up his trump card, number 1. Number 2, on 26th of November 2025, the leaders of Central Asian Republic, they came to White House, they also had a meeting, they signed a joint declaration, something to the effect of Trump's prosperity and progress roadmap. Okay, what's to that effect? And third and last point is that Trump has realized that it is a declining power and it is driven by the central factor of his campaign, election campaign, that is MAGA, to make America great again. To make America great again, there is a new dimension which, if you allow me to conclude, there is a strategic rivalry called as Eurasian battle. Europe, Asia, Europe less the West Europe, Asia and South Asia and the Middle East, total population is 70%.
From the public perception, Sudhakar ji, America with its mightiest of weapons came across weak. If you analyze the narrative, the social media handles, the talk was the cheap drones contained American weaponry and America had no weapons. You have a conversation and that is what will distill down, that Iranians were able to resist high-tech American weaponry. On this note, I thank all of you for joining me on this conversation. But to my viewers, please don't go away, because I'm going to talk about something which is very close to us, and that is Himalayan nightmare as to what we are doing to our mountains.
ease of living